Okay, Gandalf, we're recording. Thank you for joining.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
No, it's my pleasure. I touched on this very briefly in that when you become friends with someone online who's the Bitcoin Gandalf, it's going to be hard not to call them that forever. And you kindly joined me on Bitcoin with Jake a couple years back. And now it's great to see your face and to actually have a conversation. So, yeah, thank you for joining.
No worries. I can't. It's so weird to think that I went on podcasts and didn't show my face,
Yeah,
even
well,
though
that's
it
what
wasn't
happened.
that. Yeah, no, I know, but I think at some point, before I sort of use my real name on Twitter and change my profile picture to like my face instead of Gandalf, I did start to go on podcasts and show my face already before that. But then, obviously, I made the rebrand.
Yeah. No, and we'll dive into the why, but it was interesting on Bitcoin with Jake. I was very conscious of people's ability to remain anonymous online, and so I would have Zoom calls with a blank screen and just an audio line, and people could see my face, but I couldn't see theirs. And it was funny. I remember seeing some clips of you attempting to do kind of disguises as you did video calls instead of just the blank screen. So
Yeah.
um, let's start there. I'd love to learn this. So, why did you decide to start a profile called Bitcoin Gandalf and keep your real identity in the shadows?
So yeah, I joined. First of all, I joined Twitter to the first time I joined Twitter was in like the 2017 crypto bull market. Somebody told me about Bitcoin, and I don't know why. I just was like, I'm going to go on Twitter and I'm going to follow a bunch of people in the crypto space and read their tweets, and I'll figure out what's going on. As that'll be part of like me figuring out what's going on with this whole crypto thing. I remember the sort of when I came back to like revisit Bitcoin in 2020, Twitter was part of the equation again, and I just remember an account called Crypto Cobain, which is now Kobe, which I think he's very famous, right? Everyone in the crypto space knows him. I used to be in the real estate industry, and my Twitter account under my real name was sort of in real estate Twitter. And I was going through some stuff with an ex-business partner, and I was like, partly I don't want to ruin my like real estate Twitter bubble account. And so I was like, I'm going to create a separate account to talk about Bitcoin. And I was like, and people in this like crypto Bitcoin space seem to be a lot of them seem to be anonymous. So I was like, I'm going to do an anonymous account. And Gandalf was like my favorite movie character.
Cool.
So I just went for like, Crypto Cobain. I was like, I'm not into crypto, I'm more into Bitcoin. So I was like BTC Gandalf. And that's how it came about. And I also created Fiat Saruman at the same time. And in the early days, I would like tweet back between those two accounts at each other. But yeah, that's how it came about. It was basically, it was a mix of like not wanting to pollute my real name account with Bitcoin stuff at the time, not wanting certain people to find out I was into Bitcoin, and the fact that like a lot of other people seem to be anonymous, and I thought it was funny to do this Bitcoin Gandalf thing. I had been frequenting Wall Street bets as well before, and obviously like Reddit, everyone's anonymous, so it was a mixture of all those three things.
And it was a great name choice because, like yourself, I don't think Lord of the Rings is my favorite film ever, but a massive trilogy that came up
Yeah,
at an important time in my life. And I was like, oh my God, there's Gandalf. There's a Bitcoin Gandalf. I cannot believe it. Follow, straight
yeah.
away. What will this wizard teach me? And then here we are all these years later. And so why don't you take us through that a bit then? I'm going to say Daniel, actually, it feels right. So how did like tweeting to Fiat Saruman turn into like what you're now doing? And there's so many steps to that, I know.
Yeah. Honestly, I was just obsessed with Bitcoin.
Mm.
So I was like listening to podcasts, spending an unhealthy amount of time on Twitter. And, I would listen to stuff and I would tweet my thoughts. I would tweet what I was learning. I would just like reply to a bunch of people. At a certain point in my first year or two of Twitter, I think I was tweeting like between tweets and replies, I was doing like 130 tweets a day or something crazy like that
Wow.
on average. So I'm sure there were days that there was more and there were days that um, there was less. But I'm pretty sure I've tweeted pretty much almost every single day for going over 4 years now. I always like social media. I love the internet. First of all, like at the highest level, I love the internet. I think the internet's amazing. It's amazing that you can like be into the most niche, nerdy things and find like a community of like-minded people online to talk about the thing that you all have in common that you like. So I think the internet's amazing. Social media is like another layer of the internet. I used to do a lot of Snapchat stories and Instagram stories when I was in the real estate business. That's part of like how I built a personal brand and sort of got clients in the real estate industry. And I was super into Gary Vee in like 2015, 16. So it was like a combination of all those things, like the obsession with Bitcoin, the fact that there was like a big community of Bitcoiners on Twitter, and the fact that it was like social media. And so I got to like, create content, so to speak.
And I do like that idea that actually content creation is actually much better thought of as just documentation, at least at the earliest stages. So when you're finding something interesting, that's interesting.
Correct.
It sounds like unbelievably simple.
The phrase is like, to be interesting, be interested. Right. I mean, you can look at that in two sort of ways. It's like, to be interesting to someone, people like to talk about themselves. So for somebody to find you interesting, if you ask them lots of questions about themselves, then they're going to like talking to you and like hanging out with you because they get to talk about themselves all the time, right? But it's also the fact that like, if you're interested, you're really into something and you share it, your thoughts on that, your opinions on that, your insights, what you're learning, that is interesting to other people.
It's another concept I've heard before is the idea of building in the open and how valuable that can be, even if you're wrong. So people are scared of having an opinion online, or they're scared of saying anything for fear of not getting a reaction that they like. But contrarianly, the more open you are about what you're actually doing, the social media platforms kind of feed on that. Is there a trick or a hack to it? Because they'll want to know how you built it. Was there an engineer kind of in there being like, tweet this often, or like, at this time of day, or anything along those lines? Is it really just much more of like, oh my God, this is interesting, boom, this is interesting, boom?
Yeah, it was literally just verbal diarrhea, everything that's in my head onto the internet.
Wow.
At first, right?
Yeah.
And of course, I was, every tweet is a little experiment. The feedback you get is the replies, the likes, the retweets. And once you do it enough, and of course you get the dopamine hit of like, oh, this one got loads of likes, or this one went like, for me, it was like, if I got 200 likes on a post, I mean, it's still okay today, but at the time I was like, oh, I remember I tweeted a Robert Breedlove quote. And that was, I think, my first sort of like viral tweet when I had a few hundred followers. And I was like, oh, so if I tweet things that other people have said that make them look smart, they're likely to retweet those things. Of course, I wasn't then just like, I'm going to like go to every podcast and just like blast out a million quotes. Or it was like things that resonated. I tweeted that quote because it resonated with me, but I accidentally found out through doing that, oh, Robert Breedlove retweeted this. Why did he do that? Oh, because it's something he said. It makes him look smart. He wants to amplify that to his own followers to show like, look, I've got this smart thing to say. I've basically created a piece of content for Robert Breedlove. And so that was you could call that a hack, I guess. But I wouldn't just then go and be like, right, now I'm going to quote a million people on all this stuff they said and hope that they retweet me. It was like, yeah, the next time there's like something that resonates with me, I'm going to do this again. And it's just little things like that. So you eventually kind of like learn what people like and what people don't like. The problem with that is that it can lead you if you're just measuring likes, it can lead you down a path of like, you become an engagement farmer, right? And if you're just constantly chasing likes, there's a formula, you can do it. But I don't think, for me personally, it's part of the reason why I pivoted into tweeting under my own name, is just because, didn't like the engagement. I didn't like following the path that would lead to maximum followers, maximum growth, maximum likes, and all that stuff.
Okay. Interesting. And you've touched on it nicely in a sense to lead me into this question. So why did you then decide to use your own name?
Well, so like I said, part of the reason was to be anonymous from certain people to know I was into Bitcoin, but that situation is no longer present, so I can be public about it. the other thing is, as I was thinking about what I wanted to do next after I used to work at Brains.
Yes.
A short history. I used to be in the real estate industry. I sold a business in Hong Kong and left Hong Kong in 2021. And I got into Bitcoin, and I ended up taking a job at Brains. And my goal was always to do something on the internet, to start an online business of some sort. I wasn't sure if it was going to be like media content based or coding. I knew it was like either media or code. I took that concept from Naval Ravikant's famous tweet thread, how to get rich without getting lucky. One of them is like, use digital leverage. It's like, if you can't code, write books, make podcasts, write blog posts, create social media
voice.
content. Yeah. So for a long time, I thought it was going to be code. I was obsessed with indie hackers, and I was like, I'm going to learn to code. And then I realized, like, well, I have a family. I'm not getting any younger. I don't have like loads of time. And it's probably easier if I create something with a language that I already know, rather than trying to learn like JavaScript or whatever. Like, I know English. I can create content knowing English, rather than anyway. So yes. So I was like, well, I've built an audience. I've built a personal brand that got me to be able to switch careers, got me to be able to work remotely from anywhere in the world. I've moved like 3 times in the last 4 years. It allowed me to start a consulting business. So I was like, why don't I help? I did this in the real estate industry for myself as well. I like social media. I like the concept of marketing, branding, sales. I love business. So why not start a business that is all of those things encapsulated? And I can use my existing audience to launch the business, in terms of like getting clients and being able to put offers out there and have people be receptive to them. So I was like, if I'm going to do business, like, part of my thesis of like building a personal brand is tweeting under your own name, putting your reputation on the line. And I was like, I can't really do this if I'm an anonymous account. So I was like, I'm going to rebrand the whole thing. Also, I wanted to get away from the Bitcoin sort of like niche, or at least like take my brand and expand it beyond Bitcoin. Yeah. Cool. I would have happily kept the name Gandalf, to be honest. Like, it's so much cooler than Daniel.
Yeah, and also it's a kind of a friendly character that can do no wrong. Gandalf, what a legend! You're buying some brand equity right there.
Yeah, for sure, that helped. No doubt.
What would be cool, actually, Daniel, is a lot of what you mentioned resonates in terms of how I've decided to proceed with creating this podcast. Perhaps because my question, actually, let me keep it simple. So, how can you be the monopoly?
Well, so the concept behind my my personal brand consulting is that most products or services. So most businesses are commoditized, right? And it's very hard to build a brand around a business, because people just tend to resonate more with humans than they resonate with corporate brands, right? And so for most people, right, most entrepreneurs have small businesses. So for those people, but it still applies even to like the highest levels. Look at Elon Musk and Tesla. Like, Elon Musk has a bigger brand than any of his individual companies, and probably bigger than all of his companies put together. But anyway, for most people, I believe the best way to grow their business is by growing their personal brand and focusing and tying their personal brand to their business, right? So like, let's say, like, let's think about like a very commoditized service, like lawn care, right? How do you choose the company that you want to do your lawn care? Yes, assume that like they can all cut the grass really well and they do it at maybe a similar price or whatever. But what if there's like the owner of a company, or the guy who comes to mow your lawn, like, when you were looking for a lawn care company, you found him, you followed him on Instagram. He's got kids the same age as you. He likes the same football team as you. You're both carnivore. Like, there's all these little things about that person, about their likes, about their opinions that resonate with you. And we like to do business with people that are like us, right? We resonate, we connect with people that are like-minded. That's why you tend to like get communities forming around common interests, values, beliefs. So all you're doing is just like sharing yourself with the world. And there will be a subset of people that will connect with you because of those things. and they will hire you over another lawn company, because literally I've had people who are like, I've had somebody who, offers a consulting service, and a client chose to work with him because they have the same car. The consulting service has nothing to do with cars. It's like to do with sales and marketing consulting, but it's like, I picked you because we have the same car.
Wow.
Right?
Which they learned because of a social media post.
Correct.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. So the consultant posted his like Mercedes AMG thing, and the client had the same Mercedes AMG, and so he's like, "Yep, I need this service. You do this service. We have the same car. I'm going to work with you."
And so, Daniel, so when, I really love that. Let's not jump past that. You believe that the best way for a business owner, entrepreneur of basically any size, to increase the growth or value of their business is to actually grow their personal brand. But that statement in itself, to me, resonates very strongly, but isn't all that obvious. So what are some examples, other than the ones you mentioned, but perhaps people that you've worked with in addition to that, like that bring that to life? Because I think obviously entrepreneurs, they're entrepreneurial, and they're going, what can I do to actually improve the situation that I'm in? And what you've just stated is not actually that obvious.
No, I think people don't think of themselves as a brand. I think the connotations attached to personal brand, I even don't like the term that much, but I haven't figured out I want to coin a new term for personal brand. I kind of there's somebody I've heard call it the digitization of reputation, which is nice. It's nice alliteration, right? It's kind of like living in public. Like you said, documenting your life, documenting your thoughts. It's just putting them out in public so people can see them. And often that's enough to, like, people think that you have to have something interesting to say, or you have to have some special insight, or like be different or be unique. I think everyone is unique because we all have, we all come from different backgrounds. We've had different life stories, different things happen to us. And like the combination of those things makes each one of us quite unique. So yeah, I think people just don't think about that. They think like, oh, I'm starting a business. I need a business website and I need to brand my business and have a logo, and everything is done through the business. And, often entrepreneurs will also think like, well, no, I can't build the business off the back of my brand because then I can't sell it, or I can't do this and I can't do that. And that is somewhat true, to be honest. But like, how many people are building their business to sell? I think most people would be happy like getting out of their 9-to-5 and being able to do some like consulting that gives them better income, more freedom. Not everyone is trying to build this big business that they're going to sell off, right? And on the whole personal branding thing, I think even people who don't want to build a business, they don't want to become consultants, or they don't want to do their own thing, they want to be employees and work for companies, you still set yourself apart by having a personal brand. Like, I got hired at Brains because of my Twitter. I had zero experience in Bitcoin. I literally just started like tweeting about Bitcoin 3 or 4 months before that, right? But they saw my tweets. They saw I was growing an account. It was sort of proof that I understood enough about Bitcoin without needing a CV, without needing to say I did a degree in Bitcoin, or that I worked at a past Bitcoin company or whatever. Like, my proof of work was out there publicly. They saw it, and I beat out other candidates. And my value as an employee at Brains grew as my personal brand grew, right? I surpassed, when I joined them, I had maybe 3,000 followers. And at some point I passed their account in terms of like because they had slush pools. So they had like 20 or 30,000 followers. At some point, my brand, okay, I'm not going to say my brand was bigger than slush pool, but my Twitter following became bigger than their company following. Right.
Really cool. And
yeah.
What I love about that is I actually think about it, and obviously I've been podcasting for a few years now, and it's been through a few iterations, and I got involved with a couple of startup businesses and started building podcasts for them, and those opportunities didn't work out, and I ended up back at square one. It's like, I know what I love doing, and it's podcasting, so just focus on doing that. And this iteration is around my personal name, so a lot of what you're saying really resonates. And I knew before this recording was like, I might well become a customer in some way, because I have some things to learn from you for sure. What is fun about it, it's like, and why I always encourage people to create content, is you just don't know what opportunities can come out of it. So it's like that phrase, like, Bitcoin talks about being your own bank. Well, why couldn't you just be your own brand? And I like to think of all the content one ever creates as like digital breadcrumbs that people, they find them at the most random of times, and suddenly you get contacted by someone who's got something that they're interested in, and an opportunity appears that just literally couldn't have come about if you weren't actually out there documenting what you're doing or having primary research conversations, like what essentially a one-to-one conversation. Is it a case that someone can come to you then who's never created content before, or are you tending to pick up people that are like halfway along and just are a bit stuck?
So the framing is to help entrepreneurs grow their personal brands to grow in order to grow their businesses. I'm obviously trying, in terms of like the value proposition, I understand that the more money I can help someone make through what I help them do, the more money they can afford to pay me, the longer they can stay working with me, right? The framing is that I'll help you add $10,000 in revenue to your business in X amount of time through a mix of personal branding and sales and marketing strategies.
Cool. Really cool.
Yeah. But obviously I've had people who are like, I've had people who who are employees and just want to grow their personal brand. I've had like people in the real estate business. So, they work on a commission basis and they just want to grow their personal brand so they can get more clients or whatever. I've had people who want to start a consulting business, all different mix of people. I also ghostwrite for people. So I do consulting, which is more of like done with you service. And then my ghostwriting is more done for you because I'm writing social content for those people. And that tends to be for like busier executives, CEOs who understand the power of a personal brand, but they have other stuff going on and they don't have time to sit there and like draft up all these tweets and stuff. So basically with them is we meet once a week, once every 2 weeks, basically do a podcast, and then I just turn what they say into tweets.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Okay. And so one thing that really took the wind out of my sails personally, in that I also spent an ungodly amount of time on Twitter from 2020 to probably the start of 2024, roughly. And I've since become very, very interested in Nostr and spend most of my time socially online on Nostr. And one of the things, I guess, like, first of all, the experience that was using a scheduler. My old Twitter profile, I think I got to like about 8,000, 9,000 followers, and I was pumping out at times like between 15 and 20 kind of scheduled tweets. It's quite amazing what one man with a keyboard can do, to be honest. And I would hit like 1 million impressions, and you've got like 700 comments, and you're like, I've got to reply to every single one. And I just completely frazzled by the whole thing. And I kind of fell off that bandwagon in terms of the experience, as to that just wasn't quite right for me personally. It was then also bolstered by this whole idea of digital censorship and platform risk. And you're like, well, hang on a second. If you spend all this time building this audience, but it can get rug pulled because you said the wrong thing at the wrong time, isn't this just a massive waste of time? So how do you feel about platform risk? Specifically, obviously, your Twitter profile is now got immense reach. I saw some stats you posted recently that, I mean, it's fantastic the amount of attention you can sell to someone, in a sense, because of all the work that you've done. And it's built on hard work, right? You've shared interesting stuff. People like following what you're saying. That's not, you can't just magic that out of nowhere. But like, what happens if Muskie is like, don't like you today, and just switches you off?
I'm bullish on email for this because it's very difficult to get rug pulled on email. And there's more people who have email accounts than any single social media platform has users. So you can automatically, you have more control over who sees your emails in a way. The algo change, everyone's complaining about the algo on all the time. The algo is throttling me. The algo, I'm black, what was it? I'm shadow banned, like all these things, right? Yeah. So and Twitter is very trending driven, right? So writing about trends, especially in Bitcoin, does very well. Other stuff doesn't do as well. Long form potentially doesn't do as well as short form. So I like email for that. I used to, I use Nostr. I get the whole concept of protecting yourself against platform risk, about digital censorship. I think about it 2 ways. I have the skills. If I got rug pulled tomorrow and my account got banned, I would get back on Twitter and I would
do it
just
again.
keep doing the same thing I already do because I have the skills to build up the account. And not only do I know that because I've done it for myself, I've now done it multiple times for clients as well, for my ghostwriting clients, right? And I've watched my own clients do it for their own accounts. And so it's a set of skills, and nobody can take those skills away from you, even if they ban you off Twitter. It's annoying. It's really going to take time to build up again, right? But you can do it. And then second, that's why I drive now people to an email list. So email is my favorite secondary platform. And I also feel like, sure, when people follow you, they're giving you like implicit permission to invade their feed with your content. But I feel like email is an even more implicit, like, yes, I really want to hear from you. I'm letting you into my inbox. You can get a bit deeper in there. I prefer to sell on email, although I'm trying to figure out ways to also do it on Twitter without like it being, kind of like too salesy and too obnoxious and like, nobody wants to be sold to. So I'm trying to figure out ways of doing it on Twitter without, in a way that's like natural and works and gets the message across and gets me clients. Email is my big one. Plus, like, imagine you have, if you get an email list with 10,000 people in it and you get to 40-50% open rate, right? That's 5,000 people that clicked on this email and read it, or at least like clicked on it. Whereas on Twitter, it's much more difficult to know, how many impressions you're going to get on a tweet.
Yeah. And the analytics are sometimes a bit broken, and you're not quite sure what it's actually saying, and you're like, this is
How many people
that actually
are bots?
resonates a lot. I did some ConvertKit work for a while, and I just really enjoyed the simplicity of it. You could just say how you felt, boom, it goes into someone's inbox. And I think my click rates were like 43%, 45%. And it was a small email list, like maybe 300-400 emails that I collected over time. But it still was like people are actually opening them. That's a great point. I agree. And so if one was to think about, there's 1.5 billion active users on Instagram every day. It's like, well, there's a lot more email addresses than that with people that check them every day. 10 minutes ago, the vet that I took my dog to was pumping me with an email. I'm like, absolutely no way am I getting another one of those. But equally, yours, I haven't yet archived because I'm like, I want to go through what Daniel's sending me. Yeah, so with Nostr then, are you actually using it, or it's just something that you might take a look at in the future? And why would you, if you're interested in Bitcoin and censorship when it comes to money, censorship of speech online, presumably something you care about too, but you've got a lot of other stuff going on elsewhere. Perhaps it's just not worth your attention. I'm just intrigued as to why people are or are not deciding to shift over to Nostr.
You have to weigh the probability that the risk you're hedging against happens and how much, what's the trade-off of going to Nostr costing you an upside versus how much is it helping you hedge the downside, right? Yes. If my goal is to build a business that makes me a certain amount of money and I help a certain number of people, then it helps to have a larger top of funnel. I don't know what Nostr's to be honest, I don't know what Nostr's usage statistics are like and whatever. I know that for me, part of my business philosophy is I want to keep my business very lean. And so that means not doing a lot of stuff. And that includes I know that I can't be on every social media platform, killing it on all of them.
Yes.
For me, if it's if I can do Twitter, which I'm good at Twitter. I like Twitter. It just comes naturally. I do that. I copy and paste to some other platforms sometimes. And then if I can use that to drive people who are interested in what I have to say to my email list, and I can sell to them there and keep growing the email list, that's enough for what I need. I don't need to be on all of them. If there was an easy way to cross post to Nostr, like a scheduler that lets me put my tweets onto Nostr, and it's one button, I might do it. I'm not overly concerned about getting banned on Twitter, and the concerns that I do, the small risk that I assign to that chance of getting banned off Twitter and losing my audience, I mitigate by growing the email list rather than trying to grow on Nostr or some other social media platform.
And also the fact that you back yourself. It's I could build it again if I had to.
It would suck, but I can do it.
Because that is sovereignty in some ways, right? It's oh, well, I can just do it again if I had to. Okay, and I'm intrigued then about offers. And
1 second, I just want to do. So there's a quote. I think it's either like Lincoln or Benjamin. It's either Abraham Lincoln or Benjamin Franklin. If a man empties his purse into his head, then no one can take it from him.
Yeah, great.
Right. So like, this is also why I'm so bullish on consulting and coaching, because it's all knowledge and skill acquisition. And those are things that cannot be taken from you, no matter what. They can take your money, they can take your Bitcoin, they can take your house, they can take whatever, but they can't take your skills and your knowledge. And if you ask, like, you see these, there's this young guy, School of Hard Knocks, on like TikTok and Instagram. He goes around asking people how they made their money. You know, how did you make $1 million or $1 billion? And one of the questions he asks is like, if you lost it all today, could you make it back? And they're like, yeah, I have the skills.
Interesting.
Right? Yeah.
And so how I've framed this podcast is, in a sense, like yourself, it's not that I have left Bitcoin behind. Like, Bitcoin's a bigger part of my life than ever before. But what it enables me to do is to build what I want and to follow things I'm interested in. And so my curiosity, or whatever you want to call it, whatever money does get made out of that, will eventually just purchase Bitcoin. And so it's very interesting to see, in some ways, you've also gone through that same iteration of like, okay, well, it's not just about Bitcoin, obviously. It's just money. But you're using a better form of money than other people. And it's a base load that helps you be creative in the direction you want to go. And I think that's just such a fascinating thing to feel myself. And if I could share, see it in you as well, Daniel, it's really cool. But how I frame this podcast is basically everything is an investment. So when you're making an investment decision, generally people will talk about that from a financial capital perspective. But actually, you can make investments in other areas, be that in what the two big buckets I now talk about: humanistic capital, intellectual capital. Humanistic is basically having a family. And then the intellectual is exactly what you've just described. So investing in yourself to gain skills and knowledge that then drives the financial returns. Why would you invest in yourself? Well, because you could make money, essentially. It sounds so simple. And is that something that you then coach people?
I think that the best investment that you can make is literally in upskilling yourself so that you're able to generate more income. I think for the vast majority of people who are like, you know, putting away their like whatever, a few $100 into the S&P 500, hoping that in 50 years they'll have enough of a nest egg to retire, like, you could invest that money into well, I mean, you don't even have to invest the money, because if you want to find certain information, it's out there on the internet for free, right? If you don't care about learning it from somebody that, like, you know, from a coach, a consultant, or whatever, you can find it for free. And so you don't even have to invest the money. But like, you know, just like people like hiring personal trainers and people like working with coaches that they like because there's a social aspect to it, there's like an accountability aspect to it, or there's like a I vibe with your philosophy aspect to it, so I want to learn it from you. Like, I think it's the best investment you can make, no doubt. Like, you can increase your income from making like 100K to making $1 million in a few years if you learn this. If there's other people doing it, then there's a roadmap to how to do it. And so all you have to figure out is, what is that roadmap, and then just follow it, and you will do it too.
Yeah, cool. Okay, right? And so if obviously, audience members, if there's anyone out there, then highly recommend to reach out to Daniel, get in touch, and see how he might be able to help you to play a game for 5 or so minutes. Like, if I was to sign up with you as a customer, what would that process look like, and where might you take me in terms of like expectations?
My main offer is a consulting community. I have like a few ghostwriting clients, but I'm very selective about who I take on that, because ghostwriting takes up a lot of time and a lot of mental energy. So it has to be like interesting people. It has to be worthwhile. It's not just like, I don't just open up to anyone. But same with the consulting community and You Are the Monopoly. So my consulting community is called You Are the Monopoly. There's a group element to it, and there is the ability for clients to work with me one-on-one as well if they want to. But it's basically the core of it is a 16-week program where I take you through from how to position yourself and your business, how to create an offer or fix your offer. So whatever your offer is for your product or service. Some people don't have one. We create one. Some people already have one, but you know, it needs work. So we work on that. Then there's like growth strategies. So that's like sales and personal branding, marketing. And then I also work on closing.
Really cool. And so there's, I assume, so that's all packed into three or 4 months essentially.
4 months,
Awesome.
yeah. I mean, so I just finished working with like a cohort of clients, and some of the feedback was that it was too much. It was too much stuff in 4 months. I'm constantly like adjusting based on feedback from clients and how which bits people find most valuable and which they don't. The great thing is like different clients join for it's like a menu. You don't have to do the whole thing. You could just be interested in the personal branding side, or you just might want to like jump on the group calls with me and ask me questions about whatever it is that's going on. So it's the offer is just like it gives the client like the ability for them to rationalize coming to work with me. But sometimes it's just like they like me. They want more access to me. They want to talk to me. They want to be able to ask me questions specifically about their situation, right? Which that's more like psychological, emotional stuff rather than logical.
That's really cool. And actually to hear how you are constantly iterating on your offer. I think one of the challenges that I personally have felt is like, how do you sell stuff online? Well, you've got to try.
Yeah.
Hello. But that's number one, is you've got to try and sell some stuff. But then equally, like, you've got to start realizing, well, what works and what doesn't work. And the real pros are constantly iterating their offers. I would assume that they're always taking feedback from the marketplace to make it a bit better.
Yeah, certainly at the beginning, you're trying to figure out what works, but eventually, what happens is that you nail your offer. You have what's called product market fit, and then it just becomes all about how do you increase lifetime value of a customer? How do you get more customers in the door? How do you reduce your churn rate so that not as many customers are leaving? So it just becomes fine tuning things, because there is a point where you've nailed the offer. There's clear value prop. There's clear marketplace. There's clearly customers or clients that want to buy this thing. And so it turns into fine tuning other aspects of the business rather than just the offer.
It's not the first time I've had someone from Bitcoin with Jake on this iteration of the podcast. And it's awesome catching up with people, seeing like what's actually happened the last 2 or 3 years. And almost always there's been big decisions that they've made. There's been some things that didn't work, but the base case of Bitcoin as your savings technology has helped them all to really kind of claim their own time. I think that's the most emphatic thing I've seen about people who adopt Bitcoin the last 4 or 5 years. They may have got in a bit earlier than that, but like they're starting to quit, long-term fiat employment contracts. They're starting to go on trips with their families around the world. And that's just unbelievable to see. Or like yourself, starting up their own businesses in a space they're really passionate about. What I'd love to ask about though, Daniel, is you touched on having a family and moving 3 times in 4 years. And that resonates very strongly with me. So we had our third child in September last year. We've got 3 kids under 5, and life at home is very, very busy, to say the least. And we have also moved a lot. So where are you living now, if you're willing to share, and how's the decision-making process been, and at the same time as being a family man?
Yeah, congrats on the new kid, by the way. You guys are zone marking now. My friend said this. He's like, when you have 1 kid, it's 2-on-1. When you have 2 kids, it's like man marking. One takes, and then when you have 3 or more, it's like zonal marking.
Yeah, full zonal. Yeah. It's like you need to be like an octopus. It's crazy.
Yeah. You're in the thick of it. Yeah, I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old.
Cool.
Well, she's about to be 2, and I live in Dubai now. So I used to, when we chatted last, I was living in the Isle of Man.
Yeah, you just moved to the Isle of Man. Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, I grew up in Hong Kong. I lived most of my life in Hong Kong. And then after like 25 years there, my wife and I moved to Scotland. Mm-hmm. And we were there it was a decision that was made before I got into Bitcoin. And to be honest, I didn't consider the tax implications of living in the UK. So I got into Bitcoin, and then it was like something like, oh, wait, there's this thing called, because Hong Kong doesn't have a lot of taxes. It doesn't have capital gains tax and stuff. So I'd never really had to like contend with that concept. And so I was like, oh, wait, when I get to the UK and I want to buy a coffee with Bitcoin, I have to like, note that down and maybe pay a capital gain on it and whatever.
Yeah, it's wild.
So I was like, this is not going to work out for my for my philosophy of life or whatever. So the Isle of Man became like an option that was like the UK, but with a much friendlier tax regime. So we moved to Isle of Man. And then we were expecting to stay there, like, never say forever, but long term. But my wife didn't quite acclimatize to it. So we started thinking about potentially moving back to Hong Kong. And my sister in that time moved from the UK. She moved from Hong Kong to UK, but then she also moved from UK to Dubai. And so my wife had some friends who lived in Dubai as well. And she was like, why don't we do a little recon trip to Dubai and Hong Kong and see which one we like better? And I was like, I was the super anti-Dubai guy. I was, all the stereotypes. It's like when I hear people talk about Dubai, I equate it to the people who talk about Bitcoin, but don't understand anything about it. So, it's like Bitcoin's only used by drug dealers and blah, blah, blah. We're like, the thing with Dubai is the same. It's like, oh, it's built on slave labor. It's very superficial. There's no culture. All this, whatever the tropes about Dubai are. So I had all of those tropes in my head. And I was like, I'll humor her, but there's no chance I'm going to want to live in Dubai. Yeah. So we came to visit and then we went to Hong Kong. And Dubai was so much better than Hong Kong for raising a family, in my opinion. Wow. So it was easy to get a visa. My wife likes it. I was happy with it. It's close enough that I can go back to Hong Kong and see all my friends whenever I want. It's close to the UK, so we can fly back to see her family in the UK. My mum and my sister live in Dubai now. Wow. it was a great choice.
Really cool. And so I know a lot of people, they sit at home and they think about these things, but they never do anything. And you've just talked through like 3 massive decisions in terms of like geographic location. So was there anything that you might share that helped you make those decisions? Do you think it's just a predisposition to taking risk or being adventurous? Or is it more like, okay, well, I need these things to exist in my life and I've got to go and find them?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how people feel about, I have this mindset that I can do whatever I can do whatever I want. I can figure anything out. So like an international move might seem daunting from like a mindset of like, oh, I don't know what to do, or how do I get a visa, or how this. I just think like, if it's possible to do, I'll figure it out. So that's first. It's not really like I don't have any fear or uncertainty or doubt about the actual being able to carry out the logistics of it. And then I was in a stage of my life where I was like, Hong Kong's where all my friends are, so that was very distracting socially. There's always something going on. I'm always being invited out for beers and this and that. And I knew I was like, I want to build another business. After I sold my real estate business, was getting out of the real estate business, and wanted to get into an online business. I was like, I've started a couple of businesses. I bought a business. I know how hard the grind is at the start of building anything. And so I need to go full monk mode, no distractions, no friends, nothing. And so that was part of no beers. Exactly. So that was part of it, right? Part of it was like, if I move to Scotland and I just don't talk to anyone, then I have 100, my focus is on my family and myself, my business.
Great.
So all the moves were easy from that respect. The move from UK to Isle of Man was easy because of like tax purposes, like, financial. It was hard on my wife. She would have liked to stay in Scotland. But she also understood like the best thing for the family is also like taking finances into account. So we moved there. Yeah. And then the move to Dubai was kind of a mix of like, because of our own desire to move, because we, especially my wife wasn't happy in the Isle of Man. And also just like being in a more international city with more modern conveniences and stuff like that. I figured there would be some upsides to it. And there's definitely, there's things going on in Dubai that aren't going on in the Isle of Man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
that'd be totally different experience. Well, thank you for sharing all of that. It's very interesting, the idea, when you think about how insane this is to even just a generation ago, the idea that you can have a business that's totally digital. Yeah. You can earn money online with your time and a laptop and microphone, quite like what we're doing right now. And you can store it in Bitcoin, which is borderless. And you can just walk across the border through the airport and you're gone. It's completely like science fiction to like my grandfather, forget it, right? And even my father in some ways, if he was still around, would be like, what do you mean you can just move anywhere? That's insane. What are some of the disbenefits to that, if there were any that you've experienced? And it's certainly a path I'm choosing to try and travel as well. The more digital you can be, the better, because it brings you more flexibility in terms of where you might want to live and go where you're treated best. I'm still in Australia, which is a very high tax country, but there's exit routes if we needed to. And that's a whole nother podcast in itself. But is there anything that's difficult for you when you take this path?
Yeah, of course, I miss my friends. Like, I see that, they're having kids. They all hang out together. Their kids are hanging out together. I'm like, oh, I wish I was there with my kids hanging out with my best friends, with my friends'
Don't post
kids,
that.
right?
Yeah, FOMO.
I get FOMO. But then I just think, like, what mission am I on right now? I have to prioritize, right? And I could go back to live in Hong Kong, but there are some downsides to living in Hong Kong versus Dubai. And I always just think, do I need to live in Hong Kong to get some of the benefits that I want from that? Well, it's like hanging out with my friends. Well, I can just get on a plane and fly there and go work from Hong Kong for a week because I can work from anywhere. I've been to Hong Kong, like I've lost count how many times in the last 3 years.
Yeah, great.
But I go back often. The downsides are, like, yes, you might leave family or friends behind. If you're a social person, like my wife is very social. She's already made friends. She goes out for dinners, whatever. I'm quite happy, just like focused, obsessed on doing my thing. And I always say to her, like, maybe in 5, 6, 7 years, when, like, business is more effortless, then I might want to go back to Hong Kong and start hanging out with my friends again and be more social and not, spend all my time thinking about work and business and stuff like that. But we'll see. But yeah, I guess the biggest downsides are, like, the social aspect. You're disconnecting from your social circle. You're probably disconnecting from your family. I got lucky that my sister and my mum moved to Dubai as well. But I think those would be the two main downsides, I guess. And it takes, like, there's a little bit of an adjustment period to, getting familiar with the new place, a little bit of culture shock, a little bit of, like, just getting used to how things are done in different countries. But also, once you've moved around enough and been to enough places, they're all similar enough that initial impact diminishes. It's not like you're moving to a new country for the first time. You've never experienced that culture or whatever. Dubai is very similar to Hong Kong in a lot of ways.
In another life, I used to be a shipbroker, and I lived in Singapore for 4 years. So went to Hong Kong lots, had lots of friends who now live in Dubai, and it's a very popular place. So yeah, no, I wish you all the very best living there. Daniel, I really appreciate your time. And it's great to see all the progress. Like, well done. Really fantastic. Final question is, if you want to send anyone somewhere to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
Best place is to go to youarethemonopoly.com and sign up to my email list, or go on Twitter and follow me at BTC Gandalf, still on Twitter. That's awesome. My handle.
Yeah, which you're going to have to keep forever.
I'm keeping
it. The mystical powers. Awesome. Well, Gandalf, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.